He was standing in the rain, watching a lifetime get sold off for pennies on the dollar. The house, the car, the furniture, the little porcelain figurines his wife had collected, all of it laid out on the front lawn under a gray, weeping sky. Strangers picked through his memories, haggling over the price of his past. Not long before, he'd been a millionaire. Now, the last few dollars in his pocket felt like a lead weight. He was broke, broken, and utterly, completely lost. This is not a story about a financial collapse. It's a story about what gets built from the rubble. This is the story of a man who lost everything, only to find the one thing that truly mattered. His name is Michael, and for most of his life, he played by the rules. He was the guy in the crisp white shirt and the firm handshake, the one with the corner office on a high floor with a view that stretched out over the city like a kingdom. His company, Apex Logistics, wasn't just a business, it was his identity. He de-built it from a one-man operation running deliveries out of a beat-up van into a regional powerhouse with dozens of employees. His life was a checklist of success: the large house in the best suburb, the kids in good schools, the exotic vacations. He was a provider, a pillar, a somebody. When he walked into a room, people knew his name. But if you looked closer, you'd see the cracks. The permanent tiredness behind his eyes, the way he'd check his phone during his daughter's piano recital, the slow, quiet drift from his wife, Sarah. Their conversations had become logistical briefings. Who's picking up Leo from soccer? Don't forget the mortgage is due. The passion, the shared laughter, the connection, it had been slowly buried under a mountain of spreadsheets and quarterly reports. He was so busy building his empire he never stopped to notice the foundation of his life was crumbling. The first tremor was subtle. A major client, one that accounted for a huge portion of their revenue, didn't renew their contract. Market shifts, they said. Michael wasn't worried. He'd weathered storms before. He doubled down, worked endless hours, and took out more credit to fuel expansion. He was chasing the next high, the next win, convinced he could outrun the problem. Then the world shifted. Overnight, business stopped. And so did the cash flow. The emails from clients were no longer about logistics, they were about cancellations. The phone didn't ring with new business, it rang with creditors. He sat at his massive oak desk, now just a piece of furniture in his home office, and watched the numbers on the screen bleed red. He tried everything. Emergency loans, pivoting the business. He even laid off half his staff, a day that haunted him, looking into the eyes of loyal employees he considered family and telling them he couldn't afford to keep them. The final blow came on an ordinary day. The bank called. They were calling in his loans. All of them. Michael, we've reviewed your statements. We see no viable path to solvency. We have to initiate foreclosure proceedings on your personal assets, which you used as collateral. He remembers the sound of his own heartbeat, loud and frantic in his ears. He remembers hanging up the phone, walking to the bathroom, and being physically sick. The empire had fallen, and it had taken him down with it. The bankruptcy was a public humiliation. The foreclosure was a visceral amputation. But the worst part was telling his family. He gathered them in the living room of the house they were about to lose. His son, Leo, all sharp angles and teenage bravado. His daughter, Chloe, with her artist's soul and sensitive eyes. And Sarah, his wife, looking at him with a fear he'd never seen before. "I lost it," he said, his voice a hollow whisper. "The business, the house, everything. I lost everything." The silence that followed was louder than any sound he'd ever heard. It was the sound of a future evaporating. The weeks that followed were a gray blur. They moved into a small, cramped apartment that smelled of stale cigarettes and disinfectant. The walls were thin. Michael could hear the neighbors arguing, and he was sure they could hear his silence. He spent his days scrolling through job sites, but what was a former CEO supposed to do? He was either overqualified or irrelevant. Rejection after rejection piled up in his inbox like a monument to his uselessness. He felt like a ghost. The fire that had once driven him was now just cold ash. The turning point came on an unremarkable day, as the worst moments often do. He was trying to fix a leaky kitchen faucet, a task that should have been simple, but his hands, once so confident signing million-dollar deals, were now fumbling and clumsy. He couldn't even do this. He threw the wrench down in a rage, the metallic clang echoing in the tiny space. He slumped against the cabinet, defeated, and he started to cry. Not a few dignified tears, but great, heaving sobs that shook his whole body. It was the cry of a man who had finally reached the end of himself. From the doorway, his daughter Chloe watched him. She didn't say a word. She just walked over, sat down on the floor beside him, and put her head on his shoulder. Later, she handed him a small canvas notebook. "I thought you might need this," she said softly. It was a sketchbook. And a set of charcoal pencils. He almost laughed. What good is this? But her gesture, her simple, profound act of seeing his pain, cracked something open inside him. The next morning, instead of opening his laptop, he opened the sketchbook. He had no idea what to draw. So he drew the cracked linoleum floor of the kitchen. He drew the sad, potted plant on the windowsill. He drew the view from his apartment window. A brick wall and a sliver of sky. It was terrible. Awkward lines, poor perspective. But for the first time in over a year, he wasn't thinking about his failure. He wasn't thinking about the past or the terrifying future. He was just present. His mind was quiet. A thought, clear and calm, surfaced from the silence. I am not my net worth. I am not my job title. I am here. I am breathing, and that is enough for now. It was the first seed of courage. Not the courage to build another empire, but the courage to just be. To start again, not from the top, but from the very, very bottom. He started walking, every day, for hours. He'd explore the city he'd lived in for decades but had never truly seen. He walked through parks, industrial districts, and quiet residential streets. And he brought his sketchbook. He drew the gnarled old oak tree in the park, capturing the strength in its twisted branches. He drew the tired face of the old man who sold newspapers on the corner, finding a story in every wrinkle. He wasn't just drawing, he was seeing, truly seeing. One day, he saw a "Help Wanted" sign in the window of a small independent hardware store. It was for a part-time stock clerk. The old Michael would have scoffed. The new Michael, the one with little in his bank account, took a deep breath and walked in. The owner, a gruff but kind man named Frank, looked him over. "You seem a little overqualified." "I need a job," Michael said, his voice steady. "I'm a hard worker, and I'm ready to learn." He got the job. It was humbling, stacking lumber, organizing nuts and bolts, sweeping floors. But he showed up early every day. He learned the names of the regulars. He found a strange, deep satisfaction in a well-organized shelf, in helping a young couple find the right hinge for their first DIY project. He was no longer the CEO. He was Mike from the hardware store, and he liked Mike. Mike was honest. Mike was helpful. Mike had time to have a coffee with his wife in the morning and to actually listen to his son talk about his life. One afternoon, a customer was struggling to visualize a complex deck design. On a whim, Michael grabbed his sketchbook and quickly drew it out for her, showing the angles and the structure. Her face lit up. "That's incredible. You're an artist." He looked down at the drawing, then back at her. An artist? No. He was just a guy with a sketchbook. But the idea stuck. He started offering simple, hand-drawn design plans for customers' projects. Word spread. "Go see Mike at Frank's Hardware. He'll draw it out for you so you can't mess it up." Frank, seeing an opportunity, gave him a small corner of the store to set up a design and plan station. It wasn't a new million-dollar business. It was a small, thriving service that brought people in and helped them build their own dreams. The real victory wasn't financial. It was the evening his son Leo came to him holding a flyer for a local graphic design contest. "I was thinking of entering, Dad." But I'm scared. How did you, start over? Michael looked at his son, this brilliant, anxious young man, and he saw himself, but a better version. You don't start over from where you were, Michael said, his voice thick with emotion. You start over from where you are. You take the next right step, no matter how small, and you be kind to yourself along the way. He had become a different kind of provider, not of material wealth, but of wisdom, of presence, of a quiet strength forged in failure. Today, Michael still works at the hardware store. He still lives in that small apartment. By his old standards, he has nothing. But by the standards that truly matter, he is richer than he has ever been. He lost the mansion, but he found a home. He lost his title, but he found his name. He lost everything the world told him was important, and in that terrifying empty space, he finally found himself. So if you're in your own season of loss, whether it's a job, a relationship, or a dream, hear this. Your breakdown is not your end. It is your beginning. You are not your failures or your possessions. You are resilience, courage, and love. The path to your greatest victory might begin at your lowest point. Feel the pain, sit with the fear, then get up. Take one small step. Your story isn't over. It's just being rewritten. And the next chapter can be the most beautiful one yet. Never, ever give up on yourself.